Welcome to the first Voice of Rabbis podcast. I am Moshe Silverstein. I'm here to introduce a new Orthodox Jewish organization, Voice of Rabbis, Inc., and a new website, voiceofrabbis.org. VOR is probably known best for their influential X account, which currently has close to 300,000 followers and has been active since 2022. What you may not know about VOR is that it has recently been acquired by an extended family of Satmar Hasidim, of which I am a member, as a vehicle to fulfill the teaching of our great Rebbe, Rabbi Joel Teitelbaum, of blessed memory. Just a few hours after the Six-Day War ended and Israel conquered the West Bank, Gaza, and other territories, Rabbi Teitelbaum, in an example of his incredible wisdom and foresight he was known for, told of the future ramifications of Israel's actions. He said at a public gathering, which is called Shalosh Seudas, the third Shabbos meal, if people think Israel represents the Jews, that can turn them into anti-Semites. Therefore, he said, it is one of the greatest mitzvahs, which is good deeds, one can do to explain to the world that the Zionists are not representatives of Jewish people, and we have nothing to do with them. And if I remember correctly, he used the words Mesiras Nefesh, that one is obligated to give his life for such a good deed. If that's what I think he said. This is why Satmar Hasidim, who ironically are known for their insularity, are in this regard in the forefront of English language media, teaching the incompatibility of Zionism and Judaism. In fact, that's why we are hosting this podcast. And let me address one other thing before we go on to the program. There has been recently a uproar that this X account is hosted by someone in the Philippines. So let's explain what happened. The hosts of this X account have workers in the Philippines, and they are writing in things. They're writing in messages and helping out with activity. Everyday activity. It's a busy activity, a busy podcast, busy X account. And the workers over there are helping out with the writing. So that's why sometimes you can see IP addresses from the Philippines. This puts to rest all the nonsense about the Philippines. Recently, because of Israel's action in Gaza, we have seen an incredible blow-up of anti-Semitism, the likes of which we have not seen in generations before. Because of this emergency, we have created Voice of Rabbis. And now to our program, we called a famous guest, Rabbi Shapiro, who needs no introduction. Is the author of the great book, The Empty Wagon. Rabbi, any comments before we go on? Any comments on the intro?
Thank you for having me. What you said is true. I think, though, that the word Mesiras Nefesh, the phrase that the Satmar Rabbi used there, it literally means self-sacrifice. But it means in Hebrew, like in English, self-sacrifice could mean to give your life literally, or it could just mean working with great sacrifice.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that he really ruled legally, halachically, that a person has to give his life in order to do this. What I think he meant was that you have to have great self-sacrifice for it. And Satmar Hasidim do have self-sacrifice. Anybody, here's the rule, Zionists who are, the vast majority of which are not religious at all, the first thing that people need to understand, that people think that Zionism, the state of Israel, it follows the Jewish religion, which is why when Israel does something, the Jews get blamed.
Right.
In the same way that, I don't know, if America bombs Afghanistan, the Afghanis are angry at the Americans. When Japan bombs America, Americans are angry at the Japanese. When Trump calls COVID the Chinese virus, there are people who beat up Chinese people in Chinatown. Now, of course, this is criminal. You cannot blame Chinese people for a Chinese virus,
right.
and you can't blame Japanese civilians for Japan bombing the United States. But there are bad actors out there, and when a country does something that others don't like, they're going to blame the people of the country. Now, here's the problem. If America bombs Afghanistan, the Afghanis are going to be angry at the Americans. If Japan bombs America, the Americans are going to be angry at the Japanese. When Israel bombs Gaza, the Gazans and their allies will be angry at the Israelis. They should be angry at, because it was Israel that did it. But they won't. They'll be angry at the Jews. There's the difference, because Israel claims not to be the state of the Israelis. Israel claims to be the state of the Jews. Israel is different, we have to understand, than all other countries in the entire world.
Why is that?
Every country in the entire world claims to represent its citizens, or perhaps its, we'll call them alumni. Japan represents the Japanese. France represents the French. Even if a French person comes to America and becomes a citizen, France doesn't claim any political loyalty, doesn't have any claims of political loyalty from that French-American citizen, because now you're an American citizen.
Correct.
But Israel is different. Israel claims that it is not the state of the Israelis, the way France claims to be the state of the French, and Japan claims to be the state of the Japanese. Israel claims to be the state of the Jews. Now, that's legal in Israel. That's not just a political view. That is Israel's legal status. In Israel, the 2018 nation-state law said that Israel is the nation-state of the Jews, meaning not the Israelis. Only Jews have self-determination rights in Israel, even if you're an Israeli citizen. Israel is not your country in terms of your self-determination rights. So here's what this means. In Israel, they divide people up, their citizens, into different categories. So they have religion. So whatever your religion is, Jewish, Christian, Hindu, Muslim. They have citizenship. And let's say we're talking about all citizens, they're all Israeli. Then there's something called la'om, nationality. Now in America, America's your nation if you're an American citizen. America's a melting pot. That's exactly the point of America. There's a French nationality. In Israel, there is no Israeli nationality by Israeli law. There's a Jewish nationality. There are about 100-something nationalities in Israel. There's Druze, Arab, I think, but there is no Israeli nationality, even though Israel's the country. Now, they don't want people to know this because on the Israeli passports, it'll say nationality Israel, because it would look weird if you go to JFK and you show your passport and it'll say nationality Jewish. People won't know what you're talking about. But according to Zionist ideology, which is what Israel's based on, Judaism is a nationality. Being Jewish is a nationality. And therefore, there is no Israeli nationality. There's no such thing. There's only a Jewish nationality. And B, Israel is the state of the Jewish nationality, which means the definition of a Jewish state is, and you know what, you don't need me, let's let the Zionists speak for themselves. I have in front of me an article written on Israel's website from the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They're the ones that are supposed to explain these things to foreigners. A 2014 article written by Avigdor Lieberman. The state of Israel is the national state of the Jewish people. It has equal individual rights for every citizen, and we insist on this. Meaning, as an individual, non-Jews have the same rights as Jews. But only the Jewish people have national rights. A flag, an anthem, the right of every Jew to immigrate, and other national symbols, these are only granted to our people in its one and only state. Not done. There are many people who challenge Israel's character as the national state of the Jewish people. A Jewish state, says Avigdor Lieberman, says Israel, is primarily an issue of nationality. What Japan is to the Japanese, he says, and France is to the French, Israel is to the Jews. That's the definition of a Jewish state. Without Zionism, what Japan is to the Japanese and France is to the French, Israel is to the Israelis.
Correct.
But according to the definition of a Jewish, according to the definition, Israel's definition of a Jewish state is what Japan is to the Japanese, France is to the French, Israel is to the Jews. Now, it's not only here. Danny Ayalon says the same thing. Benjamin Netanyahu in his book explains that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism because just as you cannot say that I am in favor of a French identity, but I don't want France to exist, so too you cannot say I'm in favor of a Jewish identity, but I don't want Israel to exist. In other words, without Zionism, Israel's the state of the Israelis. Zionism changed that. It made Israel into the state of the Jews. All Jews all over the world. Now, this means two things. If you are an Israeli citizen, but you're not Jewish, so even though you have individual rights, but Israel is not your country, which means you have no self-determination rights, which means so long as you are a minority, all the non-Jews put together, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, whatever, you could be a Supreme Court justice, you could be a Knesset member, but you have to remain a minority. Only the Jews are allowed to control the state. Only the Jews are allowed to have control over the country. You could be a minority, and then you'll have rights as a minority. But you cannot control the state. In America, it doesn't matter what religion, creed,
right.
Whoever is the majority, a combination of different people, majority rules. That's a democracy. In Israel, Jews have to run the state. Now, which is why, that's the main reason why Israel does not annex West Bank and Gaza and make it into Israel and make the citizens, the residents, into Israelis, the same way, for example, that America made the Mexicans into Americans when they made Mexico into Texas. Then the people who were living there became Americans. Israel can't do that because then there'll be millions of non-Jewish people that are citizens, and before you know it, what happens is what Israel calls the demographic threat, which means the Jews are in danger of no longer being a majority. Oh. Israel cannot have that. If they do, if, let's say, the non-Jewish people, not only Muslims, not only Arabs, Christians, whoever, if they have more babies than the Jews and they're in danger of becoming a majority, Israel will have to figure out a solution. Either they'll do some shtick to ensure that the Jews are only a majority, however, or take away citizenship from people, or they'll say the minority of Jews rule, because it's a basic law, which is more or less equal to a constitutional law in America. They don't have a constitution in Israel. Instead, they have basic laws. So Israel's the state of the Jews. Thing number one, it means that only Jews have a right to control Israel. Nobody else does. Even if you're a majority, there's no such thing. You can have as individual, but you can't. Now, the second thing this means is that Israel is your country because you're a Jew. What Japan is to the Japanese and France is to the French, Israel is to the Jews. That means that if you have a Christian French citizen and you have a Hindu French citizen, and you have a Muslim French citizen and a Jewish French citizen. So what France is to the Hindu French citizen, and France is to the Christian French citizen, and France is to the Muslim French citizen, Israel is to the Jewish French citizen. America is not your country. Israel is your country. Because you are part of the Jewish nation, and Israel is the state of the Jewish nation. And therefore, in the 1952 status law, signed by Ben Gurion from the World Zionist Organization Jewish Agency, Article 1, this is 1952. The state of Israel regards itself as the creation of the entire Jewish people. Israel does not regard itself as the creation of the Zionists. The entire Jewish people created Israel. You created Israel, in case you didn't know. I created Israel, in case I didn't know. Entire Jewish people. What?
They hijacked me.
Exactly, but that's not it. Article 5. Listen to this. The mission of the gathering in the exiles, meaning everybody should move to Israel, all the Jews, which is the central task of the state of Israel and the Zionist movement in our days, requires constant effort by the Jewish people in the diaspora. Means you and I,
wherever I am,
wherever you are, Israel's goals of everybody moving to Israel requires constant effort from you, from me, from AIPAC, from all the Jews anywhere in the diaspora, meaning not in Israel, according to their definition. But listen to this. The state of Israel, therefore, expects the cooperation of all Jews as individuals and groups in building up the state and assisting the immigration of it to the masses of the people, and regards the unity of all sections of Jewry as necessary for this purpose. That means Israel expects, by law, all Jews all over the world to help it in its mission to get all Jews to move to Israel. That there is no other country like that in the world. There is no other country in the world that claims to be the country of people that are not its citizens, never were its citizens, don't claim to be its citizens, never lived there. It's not, I tell this to people, so they tell me, yes, you know, that's true. I'm an Italian American, and Italy doesn't have any political claims on me. And I tell them, no, that's not the same. I'm not an Israeli American. If I'd be an Israeli American, an Israeli that came here and became an American citizen, that would be a valid analogy. But I'm not. My family's from Poland. We have nothing to do with Israel. I have nothing to do with Israel. Zionism says Israel is the country of all Jews. And therefore, whenever Israel does something, just as if America bombs Afghanistan, the Afghanis will be angry at the Americans because Israel goes around calling itself the Jewish state, but not just the Jewish state, the state of the Jews.
Right. Everyone is responsible for that action.
How, to the extent that citizens are held responsible by bad actors, you cannot consider civilians responsible for a country.
All over.
Right? You can only consider people responsible for what they support and with the choices they make. So yes, if somebody, a Zionist in America, runs around with an Israeli flag, he's supporting Israel. Can't harm him either. It's a crime. Violence is a crime, but he's supporting. But if I am not a supporter of Israel, if I'm not a Zionist, if I'm a Jew, I have nothing to do with Israel, Israel won't let me off the hook, because it is the state of all the Jews. Now, we're not done with this. Israel was sued several times by its citizens because they want an Israeli nationality. For two reasons. One, Israel is a nation, and it should have a nationality. It has its own flag. It has its own government. American Jews don't get to vote in the Israeli elections, and yet they consider us they're nationals, not just potential not just that they're a service provider. They expect things from us because they are our country. The case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, okay, in Israel. I have the case in front of me. There were 3 judges, Grunis, Meltzer, and Vogelman, 21 appellants. It looks the vast majority of them are Jews, and there was an appeal to make a Israeli nationality. The the court struck down the appeal. They said we cannot have a Israeli nationality. And I quote from Judge Vogelman. The appellants argue, for example, that it is impossible to define the whole of world Jewry as belonging to the Jewish nation, the Jewish political nation. For the Jews are all of the nationality of the states of which they are citizens. That's what these guys argued.
Wow.
We are dealing with an issue that is sensitive and controversial on the moral level, they said, and the historical level, and one which has been accompanying the Jewish people for many years. It hasn't. And the Zionist movement from its inception. Yes, that's true. But here's the money quote. The conception that Judaism is not only a religious affiliation, but also a national affiliation is the foundation stone of Zionism. Zionism means that the Jewish people are not just a religion. I'm not merely an American that's practicing the Jewish religion. I am a national in the Jewish nation, just as there's a French nation and a Japanese nation and a Italian nation. There is a Jewish political nation, and Israel is the country of that nation. And Israel needs this to be true. They said because it's not just merely an ideology. The Zionists need this to be true, because imagine if Israel's a separate nation and they're not the Jews. The Jews are a religious identity. They're American Jews, Italian Jews. So the idea that you hear from the Zionists all the time, that Israel is the self-determination movement of the Jewish people, is no longer true. It's the self-determination movement of a subset of Jewish people who are called Zionists, right? Most Jews even are Democrats, not Republicans, most Jews. But the Democratic National Party cannot say they represent the Jews.
Right.
The only way Israel can claim to be the self-determination movement of the Jewish people is if they represent the Jewish people. Number one, there is a Jewish nation. And number two, the Zionists speak in their name. And in fact, in this court ruling, I quote, in addition to this ruling, which relied on the judgment of the district court in the matter, the president, that's the head of the judges, the president added that in his view, the principle of the right to national self-determination was intended to apply to nations and not to fragments of nations. In his opinion, recognition of such nationality, an Israeli nationality, might lead to national and social fragmentation of the entire nation, which means that if there was such a thing as an Israeli nationality, and they're the ones that want to exercise self-determination in Israel, they no longer have a claim of a right to self-determination because the Jews have a right to self-determination. In order for the Zionists, this is their own Supreme Court. This is not me. This is their own, the expectation they have of Jews was their own status law. This is their Supreme Court talking. They cannot make a Israeli nationality because Zionism says the Jews are a nationality. That is the cornerstone, the main foundation of Zionism. If you want to know what Zionism did, it decided Jews are a nationality.
Wow.
Okay? And that Israel is the state of that nationality. And therefore, just as America speaks for Americans in the sense that governments speak for their countries, Israel speaks in the name of all the Jews. And not only that, you're not as American as any other American, because the Christian American, America is his state. You, Israel, is your state. Israel is to the Jews in America what America is
to their own citizens,
to all the other religions in America. And more than that, later it says, Nota bene, a person cannot belong to two nations. If an Israeli nationality is to be recognized, the members of the Jewish nation in Israel will have to choose between two options, whether they are Israeli and then they will not be Jewish by nationality. By religion could be, but not by nationality. Or whether they are Jewish, and then they won't be Israeli. The same applies to members of the minority groups. So if a person cannot have two nations, I'm asking you, are you American by nationality, or are you Jewish by nationality? If you are Jewish by nationality, this is not your country.
Wow.
Not only that,
Powerful.
It's unbelievable. People don't even know this.
Unbelievable.
Now, there were people that went around asking, do you believe Israel's a Jewish state? Do you believe Israel's a Jewish state? Does Israel have a right to be a Jewish state? But none of the people, almost none, who were asked this question know what Jewish state means according to Israel. They have no idea. They say Jewish. I'll give you an example. You've heard this point from Zionists all the time. There are 25, 28 Muslim states and only one Jewish state. There are 25 or whatever Arab states, but there's only one Jewish state. It's not true. Because there's not a single Muslim state that claims that is a Muslim state in the sense that Israel claims to be a Jewish one. Because there's not a single Muslim state that claims to be the representative and the nation state of all Muslims. There's not a single Arab state that claims to speak for all the Arabs. Not a single one. Now, this business of the Zionists speaking for the Jews is old. It's as old as Zionism itself. Theodor Herzl, in his book, The Jewish State, claimed that the Zionists have a right, a legal right, to speak in the name of all Jews based on some ancient Roman law called Negotiorum Gestio. It's nonsensical, but basically it means that if you have a piece of chattel thing, metaltalin, and there's nobody there to take care of it, and it's in danger, let's say it's on a boat, so anybody can say, I am now officially the manager of this, acting on behalf of the owner wherever he may be. And since the Jews have nobody to take care of them, the Zionists therefore step in as the gestors of the Jews, and therefore they have a right, a legal right, to manage and speak in the name of Jews. And this goes all the way through Ben Gurion, all the way through Moshe Dayan, all the way through Golda Meir, all the way up to Benjamin Netanyahu. When Netanyahu came to America to speak to our Congress in the days of the Obama administration. So Netanyahu, before he left, said, I am going to America and I represent not only those Israeli citizens who voted for me, but all the Jews all over the world. Isaac Herzog referred to Netanyahu as the prime minister not only of Israel, the prime minister of all the Jews.
Half New York is his.
Half New York is his, that's right. Zionists consider you a national of Israel. You have responsibilities to Israel. That's their law. But it's not only that. I'm quoting you now from Ben Gurion. This was 1951, I believe it is. Here's what he said. There's a collective duty of the Zionist organization and the Zionist movement to assist the state of Israel in all conditions and under all circumstances towards establishment of four central matters: the ingathering of the exiles, the building up of the country, security, and the absorption and fusion of the dispersions within the state. Now listen to this. This signifies assisting the state whether the government to which the Jews in question owe allegiance desire it or not. That means whether you want to help Israel,
right,
it doesn't matter. You have a duty to do. We're speaking about countries in which the citizen is free to go against his government's will, as the Jews in England did in the days of the White Paper. They have given an example of civic courage. When the official policy of the government was anti-Zionist, they persevered in their Zionist rebellion and were not afraid of being spoken about as disloyal to their country.
Wow.
There were English citizens. They were English citizens and not citizens of Israel. And they had duties as well as rights in England. And nevertheless, they showed no fear. They live in a country where a citizen may oppose the policy of his government. You as a Jew, according to Zionism, owe allegiance to Israel, and if your country, America, which is not really your country, but according to Israel's laws, but if you're the country of citizenship, the country of where you're a citizen, allows you to disagree with the country, you have a duty to disagree with the country if the country does something anti-Zionist.
Whether I agree with them or not.
Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with them or not, as a Jew, you have a duty to Israel over your country if it's legal.
Wow. What?
This is Zionism.
There's one word for that, chutzpah.
It's chutzpah. I have another word. Anti-Semitic.
Anti-Semitic.
We'll
get to that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
This is anti-Semitism.
Absolutely.
And if you want to know why, the Satmar Rebbe said, literally, it was, if I remember right, the 6-Day War ended on Saturday evening about 7:30 p.m. in Israel, which was Shabbos afternoon in the United States. Yeah. That afternoon, the next time the rabbi spoke, right after they won, he said, you have no idea about the provocations that so many Jews were celebrating. He was crying. He said, you have no idea what kind of terrible things this is going to bring. And by the way, today, all the political and actual terrorist and military problems that Israel is having is because of Gaza and West Bank.
Correct.
Which is all because of the 6-Day War.
Yes.
If Israel had not attacked Egypt during the 6-Day War, Israel would be much better off. The Jews all over the world would be much better. The whole world would be much better off. And yet when Israel won the 6-Day War, everybody was dancing. Except this one rabbi was crying. And he said, you have no idea what this is going to bring.
Foresight.
He had no idea. A few hours after the war ended, he said, you have no idea what terrible ramifications this is going to bring. And he said, for the Jews as well. And the Jews, therefore, he said, need to tell the world, we have nothing to do with this. We have nothing to do with Israel. And by the way, that's why on Satmar, they're a very insular community.
Correct.
That's their
As
thing.
Mentioned, yeah.
And they don't allow any speeches by Jews in English. I speak sometimes in Satmar. They don't let me speak English. It's difficult for me.
It's your first language, after all.
English is my first language, and Yiddish is, in 10th grade, they taught us French. So Yiddish is like my third language, okay? I don't speak it well, but they force me.
Okay.
No problem. I perfectly respect that.
Okay.
But during protests against Israel, which the Satmar Hasidim have been making since the 1950s, the rabbi had a demand that somebody, one person, should speak English so that the world should understand the message that Israel does not represent the Jews. Now, I want to clarify something right here about these protests. People ask me all the time, these protests, how are they connected to, let's say, the protests of the people that are carrying Palestinian flags?
Yes.
So let me explain. Zionism means that Israel's not the country of the Israelis, it's the country of the Jews.
Yes, yeah.
Zionism means that the Jews are a nationality and Israel is the state of that nationality. All Zionisms believe that. They presuppose that's the definition of Zionism. Israel's Supreme Court said that is the foundation stone of Zionism. That's Zionism. Anti-Zionism means that's a lie. Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism. Judaism is a religion. There are a certain time where he wanted us to be in Egypt.
Right.
And therefore we were in Egypt. We weren't yet even Jews. But then he brought us out of Egypt.
And then we were in the desert, right?
Into the desert. And then in the desert, we received the Torah at Mount Sinai.
Right.
Then we became the Jewish people.
That's the nation of Jews.
That's the people of Jews. Now, we say nation, we need to be careful.
Right.
Because nation means a lot of things. We are not a political nation. We are not like the French.
The Torah made us for a nation, right?
Torah, a nation, the Zionists will tell you the Bible uses the word Am for Jews, and Am means nation.
Right.
So first of all, it's not true. because the political nation that the Zionists are claiming we are, there was no such concept back when the Bible was given. We were subjects of kings. The word Am doesn't mean a nation, a political nation. For example, the Gemara says, Noshim Am bifnei atzmon. Women are their own Am. Women aren't a political nation. They're like their own society. The verse in Joel, the book of Joel, that speaks about the swarm of locusts, describes the swarm of locusts as a nation of locusts. It doesn't mean it's a nation. It means a swarm of people in unity. In Shul, on the holidays, Kohanim am kedoishecha ka'omur. The Kohanim are a separate Am. They're not a separate nation. Am doesn't mean political nation. It just means a unified group. It can mean a nation because a nation is a type of unified group. But when we say the Jews are an Am, Ein umoiseinu uma ela b'soiraso. That's the quote. We are an Ummah. By the way, the Muslims have a very similar concept. I don't know enough about Islam to tell you whether it's exactly the same, comparable, or just analogous. They call the Muslim people an Ummah. But it means the same thing, a group of a religious community. The Jews are a religion. And at this point, people are going to ask, if the Jews are religion, why they're not religious Jews? So there's something very important I need to explain about the Jewish people in order to head off at the pass these Zionist claims. The Jewish religion is different than many other religions, maybe even all religions, I don't know. In Christianity, if you don't believe in Christianity, you're not a Christian. There's no such thing as a non-believing Christian. In Islam, if you don't believe in Islam, you're not a Muslim. And people think that if the Jews are a religion, if you don't believe in Judaism, then you're not a Jew. But we know they're non-religious Jews. So I need to explain how this works. In Christianity, there's one covenant, according to the Christians. Everybody has to believe in Christianity, or should. Everybody in the world should believe in Christianity, and it's better for them, then they're saved. If not, they're not saved. In Islam, everybody should believe in Muhammad and the Quran and Islam, right? In Judaism, not everybody has to follow the Torah. There are two covenants in Judaism. There's one covenant that was given to Noah, or perhaps to Adam, but right now let's just say Noah. There are 7 commandments to that covenant, and all of humanity was obligated to follow those 7 commandments. About 800 years later, God gave a different covenant, the Torah, to Moses at Mount Sinai. Whoever was at that receiving of the covenant, that revelation, now has to follow a different religion or a different covenant, Judaism. When we say there's a non-religious Jew, what we mean is that Jew is obligated to follow the Mosaic covenant and not the Noahide covenant. So if 2 people come to me, non-religious people, and they say, Rabbi, we believe that the Jewish religion is true. God gave the Torah to Moses. We believe in Judaism. It's the true religion. Tell me what I need to do. I don't know what they need to do yet. 2 roommates, college roommates. One of them tells me, you know what? My mother was Jewish. She was even religious, so my grandmother was religious. The other one says, my mother was a Catholic. We have nothing to do with the Jews. So, well, guess what? You both believe in the Torah. You have to do 2 completely different things. Right. You have to follow the Noahide covenant or the Noahide religion. It depends upon how you're defining the words. Okay. You have to follow the Torah, the 613 commandments. And if you want to do the right thing, you have to follow that religion, that covenant. Right. You have to follow that covenant. So when we say non-religious Jew, all we mean is a Jew that is obligated, whether he is compliant or not, to follow covenant B, the Mosaic covenant, as opposed to the 7 Noahide covenant. And when we say, in that sense, there are non-religious Jews. However, only in that sense, there are non-religious Jews. but in the sense of the brotherhood of Jews, in the sense of the privilege of Jews, in the sense of the reward that's given to Jews, in the sense of the connection to God that the Jews have because they follow the 613 commandments, the non-religious Jews do not. They are called what we call kofrim, a kofir. And actually, the Muslims also have a word called, I think, kafir, something like that. It's the same root. I guess. It's the same root, yeah. And it means basically that you are, put it this way, as a rabbi, I could tell you that a religious non-Jew, meaning that follows the 7 commandments, and I'm telling you as a rabbi that if you have a non-Jew who follows the 7 Noahide laws, and they're not difficult, you can't kill, you can't steal, you have to set up a system of civil law, not necessarily the Jewish system, a system of civil law. Correct. You can't worship idols. He is closer to God than a godless heretic like Theodore Herzl.
Oh,
for sure.
Yes.
Judaism is a meritocracy. Your soul, whether you have human soul, a holy soul, a demonic soul, all of those you could have if you're born Jewish, depending upon your actions and your behaviors and your theology. A Jew could be born a Jew and have the holiest soul in history like Moses. Or a Jew could be born a Jew and have a demonic soul, a soul of Shindalids, of demons and she-demons, soul of Lilith, and they can. All depends upon their actions. This idea that the Jews are a race, this idea that the Jews are some kind of ethnicity, is shared by 2 groups and promoted by 2 groups, Zionists and anti-Semites.
Oh.
They both agree on that.
They have a connection, Zionists and anti-Semites?
Zionists and anti-Semites both believe, first of all,
is it maybe the same thing?
Zionism definitely is anti-Semitic in many ways, as we explained. The dual loyalty trope, the idea that I am less American than my Christian neighbor, than my Muslim neighbor, than my Buddhist neighbor, that's anti-Semitic. And it's the idea that the Jews it's some kind of racial thing, or that Israel owns me. That's anti-Semitic. And not only that, but they must have it. They said that the only reason that they are able to claim that they have rights to self-determination there is A, if the Jewish religion is not true and Judaism is not merely a religious but a national identity. And not only that, 2, the Zionists have a right to speak for all the Jews. And 3, the Zionism is the national movement of all the Jewish people. Otherwise, they have no right to self-determination. Not me talking. That's Israel's Supreme Court talking. So for their political reasons, they need to say the Jewish religion as practiced and believed for thousands of years is not true. We're a nationality. And 2, they are our leaders. They get to speak for us. And that results in terrible anti-Semitism because all of these things that Israel is doing, the ICC has a warrant out for Netanyahu's arrest. He's not my prime minister. What do I have to do with him? Now, the difference between us, getting back to what I said before, and the people that are protest for Palestinians, I had this policy for many years, and I've said it on many podcasts, and many anti-Zionists, non-religious Jews, have a difficult time accepting it. Some do, but I'm making headway. Every time I explain it, I have a little more people that agree with me. If Zionism means that Jews are connected to Israel, anti-Zionism means that's all a lie.
That I'm not connected.
I'm not connected. I have nothing to do with Israel. Not that, okay, I'm against this action of Israel or that action of Israel. Let's say I'm against actions of Zelensky in Ukraine. I'm against, let's say, actions of Putin in Russia. I'm against actions of China. I'm against actions of North Korea. I could be against actions of Israel, not because I'm a Jew and therefore I have an obligation to speak about Israel.
It's my personal belief.
Have nothing to do with Israel. Israel has as much to do with me as Ukraine. Nothing to do with me. The Satmar Rabbi himself, somebody asked him about this once. If somebody's listening to this, a Satmar guy, it's in the Sefer Doilu Mashke. Somebody asked him about with the Palestinians. He says, I should weigh in on what's going on. I have as much, whether the Zionists, he passed away 1979. So this happened to have been like in the 60s, maybe even before the 6-Day War. I don't know exactly when it was. But he says, you're asking me as a Jew, who owns this land or that land, Israel or the Palestinians? I have as much to do with that as who owns the English Channel, England or France. That's what it has to do with me. So if somebody comes to me, and people do all the time, I've spoken at many Satmar protests in English.
Yes.
Probably
we know that.
More than everybody else put together in history. In the English speakers, probably. People come to me and they ask me, people from the press sometimes, they don't really care about what we're protesting. Our protest is that Israel has nothing to do with us, that their actions don't represent Judaism, the behavior is not Jewish, it has nothing to do with us. That's what it is. They're also individual oppressions against religious Jews that we protest.
Correct.
Autopsies, digging up Jewish graves, drafting yeshiva boys and girls, religious, right, etc. All of that. But very often, somebody from the press, not the Daily News or the New York Times, they're too influenced by Zionists. They don't care. But if somebody comes to me from the press and they say, they want to interview me, they don't care about the autopsies. They don't care about the drafting of the yeshiva boys. Even though recently there was a gigantic protest in Manhattan where the press did care. That was a pleasant exception to this rule. But usually they ask me only one thing. What do you think about what Israel's doing to the Palestinians? I say, excuse me, am I Israeli?
You're asking the wrong person.
I say, am I Israeli? No. Am I Palestinian? No. I said, why are you asking me? Because I'm Jewish. So you think because I'm Jewish, I need to weigh in on what's going on in a foreign country, Israel? Oh, you're a Zionist. That's why I told him, you're a Zionist. Why don't you ask the Chinese guy what he thinks? He seems like an intelligent guy, as likely to have an opinion as me. Because I'm Jewish, I'm connected to Israel. I said, that's what we're protesting against. The idea that because I'm Jewish, we're connected to Israel is what we're protesting against.
The disconnect.
Yes, anybody can have an opinion about whatever they want. People can have Zelensky's no less Jewish than Netanyahu. And if somebody wants to have an opinion about Zelensky or Putin, let them. Somebody wants to have an opinion about Israel, I do have an opinion. But the idea that you're going to ask me as a Jew that I should weigh in, I object to that. That's offensive. That is the dual loyalty trope. That is Zionism. The idea that I'm connected to Israel because I'm Jewish is Zionism. I am absolutely offended at it. Somebody asks me because I'm Jewish. I remember I was in Manhattan. It was the corner of 34th Street and 8th Avenue, right outside Penn Station. It was in a summer day. A guy comes over to me, some tourist, didn't know English. So he opens up his iPhone into Google Translate, and I couldn't see what language he was translating from, but in English it said, encouragement for your country. He meant Israel. That's what he says. So I say, you mean Israel? So he nods. I say, no. America is my country.
My country.
My country is America. My country is America. So this is, Zionism is anti-Semitic. That's exactly what it is. And not only that, the Zionists, let me get this, the Zionists themselves they understand this. I have in front of me, I have a whole bunch of stuff over here. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to use it all, but I have a book over here. It's called The Making of Modern Zionism, The Intellectual Origins of the Jewish State, classic Zionist book by Shlomo Avineri, probably their greatest political scientist they ever had. And he has a chapter on each founding father of his, Pinsker, Herzl, Breakoff, and he has Heinrich Gretz, the historian. Now, even though Gretz is not usually looked at by the average person as a Zionist, but here he is. In fact, he's the second personality that's profiled here. He's the second personality profiled here. Here's what he says. The programmatic significance of Gretz's position is enormous and revolutionary. The programmatic significance of Gretz's position is enormous and revolutionary. The Jews, he said, are a people, a nation, not just a community of faith. They have a history, and Jewish national history has a meaning within the structure of world history. Judaism, moreover, has a political content as well as its religious belief system, and the messianic dimension of Judaism has clear political connotations inextricably connected with Palestine. Gretz was the one that invented the idea that the Jews are not just a religion, a civilization, a political group, what have you. That was revolutionary. This is a Zionist writing. Yet Gretz's main impact and legacy was his monumental History of the Jews. Many Jews who became deracinated from their religious and traditional background drew their historical self-awareness as Jews from Gretz's volumes. Biblical heroes who slumbered in Jewish self-consciousness for generations were revived and underwent a far-reaching process of emancipation, secularization, and romanticization. Meaning, the Zionists not only changed being Jewish, to a political identity rather than merely a religious identity. They changed the Holy Land into a political homeland. They changed the holy language into a national speaking language. They changed our prayer next year in Jerusalem from the desire for a messianic renewal of the world where there will be peace. Yeah. A resurrected from the dead King David will rule on the throne. Nothing less are we asking for, to a desire for political self-determination.
Yes.
Not only did they tear out the guts of Judaism and replace its husk, they filled its husk, they stuffed it with political and national ideology, completely destroying Jewish identity, but they went to the Bible and they changed the understanding of different biblical characters into Zionists rather than Jews. Listen to this. Biblical heroes who slumbered in Jewish self-consciousness for generations were revived and underwent a far-reaching process of emancipation, secularization, and romanticization. Perhaps more than any other person, Gretz contributed to the view of Jews as a nation. Today, his historical method can quite rightly be criticized as inadequate and highly slanted. It was propaganda, not history. Yet, it educated a whole class of modern, secularized Jews to view their own history in terms relevant to a modern, secular, and highly politicized world.
Wow.
Zionists, you know what the Zionists did? They changed the Jews from a religion to a political nation. Now, the question is, why did they do this? And by the way, before I get to why they did this, regarding this anti-Semitism, I must mention this. A couple of weeks ago, last month, January, I received a communication from one of the commissioners of President Trump's
Yeah, I
department.
wanted to ask about it. Okay.
I'll tell you the whole
Go ahead.
story, and it has to do with this.
Right.
This idea that Zionism expects Jews not to be real Americans, but rather to be loyal to Israel. It's unbelievable. There is no other country like that. Even China. China doesn't do it. Hungary doesn't do it. There is no other country like Israel in the entire world. Nothing like this. Carrie Prigine Bowler.
Okay.
She told me about this commission, which I wasn't aware of, but apparently President Trump created this commission, has about 12 people, maybe 13, maybe about a dozen people on it.
What was the purpose of the commission?
The purpose of the commission is to discuss, once a month they meet, issues having to do with religious liberty. So, for example, religion in the military, things like that. And every month is a different topic. The commissioners call witnesses. Now, it's not a court, but it's like a congressional hearing where they ask people questions, they speak, they gather information, and then they get together and take the information to the president to make recommendations for him. Okay? So she wanted me to be one of the witnesses. Okay?
Yes.
Because in February, the topic would be anti-Semitism. Okay? And the witnesses basically were, so far, it seems, Zionists. Now, I know, and I told her, I said, listen, when Zionists talk about anti-Semitism, they don't mean that you're walking in the street of Manhattan and some guy comes and swats your yarmulke off your head.
Yeah.
That's not what they mean. Or like in Penn Station a number of years ago, I was walking in Penn Station over here and somebody threw a penny at my feet. That's not what they're going to talk about. All they're interested in is people should support Israel. That's it. Campuses, whatever. That's all the topic is going to be.
Anti-Israel.
Anti-Israel. That's all it is, that people need to support Israel. I said, what? No, she wants me. She said she wants me.
Okay.
No problem. But I have to go through, she's not the boss. I have to go through other people. So she said that you need, the idea is to have experience about anti-Semitism, an idea, and a solution about what should be, right? So I had a great idea, which is the truth. I said that we Americans, American Jews, are perceived as less American than the average American because we have some country we are subject to some country 6,000 miles away claiming that it is the Jewish state, that it represents us, it speaks in our name, and statistics show, not my statistics, Tel Aviv University's Cantor Center for Anti-Semitism keeps track of anti-Semitic incidents every year, and it's clear, and anybody who's been alive for the last 2 years can see this. Whenever Israel does something that is disfavorable to others, attacks on Jews go up.
Correct.
And the reason is, everybody says, pretty obvious, that's the Jewish state. Never mind these synagogues, these Zionist synagogues that are selling Israeli land. Never mind Zionist institutions that have Israeli flags. Never mind neighborhoods that hang up Israeli flags in the street. Never mind that Zionism that says, okay, guys, come get us. You don't like Israel. It's a terrible thing, terribly dangerous. Anti-Semites love Zionists. They do. Anti-Semites love Zionists because, first of all, the anti-Semites, Zionists say Jews belong in Israel. Anti-Semites agree.
Yeah.
Go to Israel.
Yes.
There was this guy, Richard Spencer, who on Israeli television, he said, I consider myself a white Zionist. I respect you Jews.
Yes.
You have your ethno-state. Would you want other people moving into Israel? No. America's for the whites. I want what you have. They're the role model for the white supremacist anti-Semites. And they love them. They love people to say, and I'll prove, whenever I say this all over, that we're Jews, we have nothing to do with Israel. All the anti-Semites get around and say, Shapiro's lying. It's not true. Jews are responsible for Israel. All Jews are Zionists. Jews support Israel. Of course, Jews are Zionists. 95% of Jews are Zionists. It's anti-Semites and Zionists both say that. David Duke wrote an article about me on his website.
So popular, that Shapiro.
So David Duke wrote an article about me on his website saying that I did a video one time after one of the protests, one of the large protests, that it wasn't only Satmar. Both Satmars together with the Litvaks, it was Foley Square, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. And I did a video about it afterwards, explaining why Orthodox Jews don't want to go into the Israeli army. Basically, it's a Zionist army, and we're not Zionists, and they teach Zionism. They try to make you into Zionists. And the usual thing that I say, I'm not a political commentator. I'm a student of Judaism, and I've been studying Zionism to understand its effect on Judaism for over half a century. No exaggeration. And that's what I spoke about. David Duke wrote an article, and he says it was titled Orthodox Jews, Part of the Solution or the Core of the Problem, okay, about how it's not true. Don't believe what Rabbi Shapiro says, that Jews are not Zionists. They are. Not only that, but in Israel, the most Zionist Jews are the settlers. They are, but it's not my religion. The Christians have evangelicals, and they have Catholics. The evangelicals are Zionists. There are others that are not Zionists. And you won't be able to tell the difference. They both dress like with crosses around their necks. And how do you know the difference? The Zionists are idol worshippers, as far as I'm concerned. They are practicing a different religion.
Yes.
And the distance between us and the settlers, the religious Orthodox Zionists, is greater than the distance between the Pope and the Catholic Church and the evangelicals.
Wow.
Is different, much more distant, that's for sure. But doesn't matter to the anti-Semites won't admit that, and the Zionists won't admit that. No, it's not true. Whenever I say this, anti-Semites always say, you're lying. The Zionists are telling the truth. Zionists feed ammunition to anti-Semites.
You see what drives their hate.
You see what drives their hate? Look, just look who's running around saying, I'm a liar, and look who's running around saying, I'm telling the truth. The Zionists and the anti-Semites are both saying, Jews are Zionists. Israel represents the Jews. Israel's the Jewish state. Too late, the anti-Semites say, you're protesting against Israel. Where were you for 30 years? I got to tell you something, 30 years, I was protesting. There are videos of me with a little black beard without one gray hair in the same spot in front of the Israeli consulate on 2nd Avenue over here, leading protests, okay? And I've been doing this for all these years. Yes. It doesn't matter. The Zionists and the anti-Semites are...
Unfortunately, they're louder, so they can say you never protested.
The Zionists, sure, and the Zionists, we're a fringe, we're everything. It's not true at all. Just try to say something, and then they'll try to destroy your life.
How come can they say there's a fringe? How can they say that? There's so many Jews. I guess it's only because in the insularity, right?
There's insularity, and don't forget there are a few things. First, I actually had a debate with Grok, which will be online soon. And Voice of Rabbi certainly will repost it, that it's really not true. The reason why people think that is because Jews such as me, and certainly even more insular Jews such as you and the people who run Voice of Rabbis, we have nothing to do with Israel. Our job is to study the Torah, to do our work, because some stupid country 6,000 miles away runs around saying they're us. Now we have to drop what we're doing and become media people. Right. And these guys don't even go to college. They go into business. All they want to do is spend time with their family, pay their taxes, be normal Americans. Their life should be interrupted because of some crazy people. No, we don't do it. Besides modern law, look, here's what I said. Here's what I told Grok. The largest congregation, we don't use the phrase like Christians do, but just so that they should understand, what they would call the largest church.
Yes.
We don't do the largest congregation in the world are the Satmar Hasidim.
Right.
Very anti-Zionist. Yeah. I asked Grok, what is the largest Jewish educational institution? By far, Lakewood Yeshiva. It's like much bigger than Yeshiva University, even a plurality of, not Hasidim, They recently prohibited any of their students, the 4 deans, to join the WZO, any Zionist organization, regardless of the benefits, because it is prohibited according to the Torah to join a Zionist organization because Zionism is diametrically opposed to the Torah and is a tremendous sin. What is, even the Aguda, which is we'll call it middle of the road, advocacy organization, their Council of Torah Sages also prohibited any of their members to have anything to do with any Zionist organization because Zionism is not Judaism. The only thing is that Satmar, because the Satmar rabbi had the foresight in 1967, he told everybody that it's a mission. It's a mission, and that's why the vast majority of Satmar, and I have something of a connection to Satmar, and which is how I got involved in this too. And mostly because I appreciate that rabbi's wisdom, scholarship, and piety. I always say, the more you know about Zionism, the harder it is to be a Zionist. People ask me how to get people to drop their Zionism. I said they need to study Zionism, and the more they know about it, the harder it is to be a Zionist. The more you know about that rabbi, the Satmar rabbi, the harder it is not to love him. Okay? So anyway, getting back to where we were. I told her, look, I'm not getting my hopes up, but fine. And I said that we Americans, I said, it's not that I'm demanding equal rights for Jews, that Americans should give Jews equal rights. No. We're Americans like anybody else. My family's from Poland. I have nothing to do with Israel. The idea that Israel is to the Jews what America is to the non-Jewish Americans is anti-Semitic, and we suffer because of it, reputationally, materially, and socially. And the solution is, in civics class, they should teach what America is. America is a melting pot. The whole country's 250 years old. Almost everybody who's in America, immigrants, Italy, Ireland, wherever, American citizen is American nationality. You're loyal to America. You hang out your flag on the 4th of July. You pay your taxes. Yes. You sing your Star-Spangled Banner. You are not that, okay, America has to also give you rights. No, you are an American too. That needs to be taught. America, the melting pot, a land of the free and the home of the brave. That's what they need to teach. Now, that little thing that Jews want to be Jews want to be recognized for what they are. Regular Americans, as much as the Muslims, as much as the Hindus, as much as the Roman Catholics, as much Catholics used to be discriminated against. Once upon a time when Kennedy became president, he was a Catholic. It was big news, and they said, it's true.
Then it shifted.
Now it shifted. Biden was a Catholic too. But it was a big thing in the colonies, the 13 colonies back in those days. Those are British colonies. But yeah, the Church of England is not Catholic. But we're regular Americans. And teach about America, America the melting pot. Teach that poem on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty written by Emma Lazarus, who, by the way, was a Zionist, but never mind that. About give me your huddled masses and your people. Now, what could be better for the Department of Justice's, President Trump's? This is Stars and Stripes, what I'm talking about, right? What could be better? I got contacted by the committee. The lady who contacted me, she was extremely nice, both in demeanor and content. I could hear her smile on the other end of the phone, yes. But after I explained to her what I was going to say, because everything has to be vetted, she said, sorry, but there's no room anymore. There are no slots open. Oh. Okay, and I could write a paper and send it to them. I called back Carrie, and I told her. She was very upset. But what am I going to do? What should I do? I'm not in charge.
It's the bosses.
It's the bosses. A day before the hearing, she asks me, Carrie, if she could quote me. I said, sure. And she asked me if I could prepare for her like a 30-second statement, and she's going to read it. And I said, sure. Now, a little about Carrie Prigine. She used to be an evangelical. She converted or repented, I'm not sure what the right word is in their religion, to Catholicism. Now, the evangelicals are big Zionists. The Catholics are not. Now, what I'm about to say, I can't swear that every Catholic of all denominations, I know almost nothing about Catholicism, but this is what I'm gathering from this story, okay? These Catholics believe that Israel has nothing to do with any biblical promises, the State of Israel in 1948, which we also believe.
Right.
If anything, the opposite.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with any biblical promises, and the idea that the evangelicals have, that the Jews are returning, they're anti that. So they're anti-Zionist. In fact, they believe that any promises to the Jews is now given to the Christians, that they're the new Jews, whatever. Okay. So there comes the hearing, right? And they have a bunch of these Zionist witnesses. The president of YU, some others. One of them, I think, was a dentist. I don't know, whatever. And they were speaking about basically
Zionism.
Anti-Semitism, which to them is the same thing. So Carrie Prigine Bowler, she reads my statement, 30 seconds. And she says, Rabbi Shapiro from New York, that's all she said about me. And she reads and she says that Jews are burdened, are the only religious group burdened by this perception that we're not fully American because of Israel and Zionism, the ideology that's all over that says we are connected to Israel. You know how many people come to me and say, your country, it's not my country. This is my country. Yes. I'm sorry. And she read like for 30 seconds. Now, I thought she was going to say, okay, so what do we do about this? She did even more. She said, is this anti-Semitic? Now, how in the world could this be anti-Semitic to say, I'm a Jew, I don't want to be associated with any foreign country. I am American, red, white, blue, stars and stripes. I want to be equal America, and the solution is in civics class. They should teach America's a melting pot. I'm a citizen. How could that be anti-Semitic? The Zionists refused to say it's not anti-Semitic. One of them said, if he's using a double standard, then yeah, he's anti-Semitic. Another one said, he quoted Anatoly Sharansky. Anatoly Sharansky said that there are three things you can't do about Israel. You can't, I think, demonize, double standard, or delegitimize, I think. Now, of course...
that makes you an anti-Semite.
That makes you an anti-Semite, right. Now, of course, delegitimize is interpreted by the Zionists, and demonize is interpreted by the Zionists, and double standards. But that's what he said. That was his answer. But they didn't answer the question. And so she asks again, and the guy says, if he's using a double standard, then yeah.
What's a double standard?
So
whatever it means.
Double standard, what they're saying means that somebody thinks Israel shouldn't exist, but all other states should exist, which has nothing to do with what I said. But since he tentatively accused me of that, I'm going to tentatively answer him. But then she said, I'm a Catholic, and we don't believe in Zionism. That has nothing to do with the Jews or biblical promises. And of course, now we have Mike Huckabee and all these guys and the evangelical. And she's saying, no, are Catholics anti-Semitic? And they wouldn't answer that either, but the implication was, yes, they are. She asked one guy, then she said, is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? They said, yes, all of them. Yes. Anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism.
Yes.
It was unbelievable. And then in the middle, like a little while later, they were going to end. It was towards the end. And the chairman said, Carrie, you have your light on. I guess they have lights when they want to talk or something. Carrie, you have your light on. Do you want to say something? He says, yeah, I didn't get an answer yet. I want to know if what the rabbi said is anti-Semitic. So one guy says, I'll answer that. You know what? It doesn't matter if he's anti-Semitic. It doesn't matter if somebody's anti-Semitic. I don't care if anybody's anti-Semitic. They could believe Jews have horns or Jews run the banks as long as they don't break the law. Okay. And then he said, are you talking about Rabbi Shapiro of the empty wagon? He said, he's discredited. He has He was, I forgot the incredibly discredited or something like that. He deliberately mistranslated Elchanan Wasserman. He just made it up, like literally. I'm not even going to bother arguing with him until anybody comes up with anything I mistranslated. Listen, if this guy wants to know how to read Hebrew, I'll gladly tutor him if he wants. Gladly, all right? But I don't know, according to whatever. And that's how it came out. Now, but here's the thing. Okay, then it ended. By the way, there was one person that took up Carrie's question about the Jews. Ben Carson. You remember Ben Carson?
Yes.
He ran against Trump,
I think he
the
was
surgeon.
The hot secretary.
What?
I think it was the hot secretary.
Yes.
Back then.
Yes, he was a surgeon. Okay.
Yes.
So he's on the committee. And he was the only one. There were Jews there. Nobody. It's a problem. I brought up a valid question. I, as a Jew, want to be like every other American. I was born here. My mother was born here. Father's from Poland. My mother was born here. My mother was a school teacher here. There is no reason why I should be considered nationally connected to some foreign country. So Ben Carson said that, yeah, it's a terrible thing if Jews are looked at like that. And the Jews were part of this America's story. And if it wasn't for the Jews, I don't even know if we'd have a country. There was a Jew, probably Chaim Solomon, who funded George Washington.
Right, yeah.
And he said there were Jews who fought in the civil rights battle, and there are Jews who died. And if it wasn't for the Jews, he said, I don't even know if we have a country. And then he opened up he didn't mention anything about Israel, because he said, how do we get people to look at the Jews not as outsiders? Nobody answered. They changed the subject, and that was it. One guy, Ben Carson, even took it up. Now, here's the worst part of this, okay? Now, the Zionists have a strategy, because in order to understand Zionism, in order to understand Israel, you need to understand Zionism. There's a big problem about political commentators discussing Israel. They're looking at Israel as a regular country doing political things. And they're looking at, is it good, is it bad, a genocide, apartheid, self-defense. They're looking at it in those terms. And then when they see a problem, they're saying, oh, it's Jewish supremacy or white supremacy or Zionist supremacy. What they're missing is the actual ideology that is motivating and driving them to the point where they're predictable as a sunrise. And that's Zionism. If a person understands Zionism, they'll understand everything Israel's doing. But not the Zionism that they teach in the Zionist propaganda places. Real Zionism, what Zionism really was, because they're possessed. They're possessed by this Zionist ideology that they see the world in a completely different way than everybody else. They're not living in the same world that everybody else is. They perceive things completely differently, and it's all the way they were taught. But they also have strategy, and we need to understand the Zionist strategy.
And you know how we train for the army? We don't train for defensive warfare. If the war against Israel ever had to be fought on Israeli soil, do I have to tell you? It's an impossibility. So it's the same thing. Don't let the war of words ever be fought about Israel's nature. Let it be fought about why you can't accept Israel, why you have to single out this tiny people.
To paraphrase their own words, never defend Israel. Always attack the guy that argues against Israel. One of them said, imagine if Israel's wars would be fought on Israeli territory. That would be a disaster. Israel's so small, right? You can't. So all the wars have to be fought in Gaza, in Iran, in Lebanon, whatever, to fight the war in Israeli territory. So they say that to fight the war of politics, the war of words on Israeli ground is equally devastating. Never defend, never let the discussion be about whether Israel is apartheid, whether Israel is genocide. Never let it be. Instead,
Attack.
why are you asking about Israel? Israel's so small. Why are you obsessed with Israel? You're an anti-Semite. This is what you should do. Stop discussing things. Attack. Bring the war to them. Never allow the discussion to be about Israel. The discussion needs to be about the other guy that's questioning Israel. That's their strategy, and they actually teach it. They teach it in Hasbara classes. They teach it. They actually have form place where they actually teach this. This is a strategy of theirs. And therefore, we had this couple of weeks ago, they had this commission. Okay. So first thing, Carrie gets fired.
Why?
Why? She says she hijacked it in order to discuss her own political agenda. Now, she says that the person who fired her, the chairman, has no authority to fire her because they were all appointed by Trump, and only Trump can fire somebody. So she says she's not fired. She says, I don't report to you. You're not my boss. You didn't hire me. Okay. Well, she says she's still on it. So that's what's going on over there. But listen to this. Right now, after this whole story I told you, there should be discussions in newspapers. Okay, are Jews treated like Americans? Let's say somebody doesn't want to agree with me. Discuss it. Say, you know what? It's not true. Ben Carson discussed it. Continue that discussion.
Yeah.
That should be the discussion.
Right.
No, it's not. The discussion. They had article, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, The Atlantic, Zionists wrote articles. Is Carrie Prejean an anti-Semite or is she not?
Wow.
She's an anti-Semite.
That's your attack.
That's the attack. Don't let
Wow.
the discussion be about whether Israel is a liability to the Jews. Don't let the discussion be about whether Americans are allowed to say we're not connected to Israel. Don't let the discussion be about that.
About them.
The discussion should be, is she an anti-Semite? Why is she an anti-Semite? Why is she possessed? Does Catholicism really say what she says? Is she a real Catholic? Let it be about them. And that's all that is talking about. The Atlantic, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, these are places. And nowhere did I see, anywhere, did anybody send me anything about the topic, the question that was brought up, which still to this day has not been answered. Okay? The only answer we have is people like Voice of Rabbis, and I got to congratulate you.
Thanks.
And if anybody else is out there, please, the idea is, if whether you're Jewish or not, please tell the world, Israel does not speak in the name of the Jews, despite what they say. Netanyahu represents the Jews. Israel's not the country of the Jews. Israel is the country of the Israelis. I'm not even saying that all Israelis agree with everything Netanyahu does. But that's the same as saying...
He's a citizen.
But they're a citizen. That's like saying not all Americans agree with, let's say, Trump bombing Iran. But to say that because Trump bombed Iran, a Mexican is now responsible, that's insane. Because if one of these... Yes, it's true. It's criminal to beat up a Chinese guy because of a Chinese virus. It's criminal. But even a criminal would not beat up an Irish guy because of a Chinese virus. So somebody comes to you and says, I want to beat you up because you're Chinese and there's a Chinese virus. What would you say? You'd say, I'm not Chinese. That doesn't mean you should beat up Chinese people.
No.
But I don't know what you want. People come to me about Israel. I have nothing to do with Israel. I'm Jewish. My school that I went to, the largest Jewish school in the entire country, by far, has nothing to do with Israel. My congregations have nothing to do with Israel. We have nothing to do with Israel. If you want to know if somebody has to do with Israel, ask him. If I want to know if a Christian's an evangelical, I don't assume because somebody is wearing a cross that they're evangelical. What right do they have to assume that? The answer is because the John Hagee or whoever is in charge of the evangelicals, he's one of those preachers. They don't claim that they represent the Catholics. They claim that they represent the evangelicals. See, that's the difference between Zionism and all the other breakoff Jewish movements. Reform Jews, they claim Judaism is a religion. They have the right interpretation. We have the wrong interpretation. No problem. The black Hebrews say they're the real Jews. We're fake Jews. No problem. But they don't represent us. We're just wrong. Conservative, Karoyim, Tzadukim, all of these guys. We're wrong. their rights. Israel's different. Israel says the Jews are not a religion. The Jews are a nationality. All Jews belong to that nationality.
And they own us.
And they own us. They are our state, whether we like it or not. And they need to do this in order to be able to make their claim for self-determination. And this is not me saying, this is Israel's own Supreme Court, lawmakers, Ben-Gurion, their own political scientists. And I could go on, but I think we're running out of time.
Okay, so Rabbi, let me ask you another question. You mentioned Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, and you mentioned, let me ask, what was really the shita?
The
position of our four rabbis, the rabbis of the prior generations.
Okay, so let me explain. A lot of people, Zionists and anti-Semites both, want to marginalize anti-Zionist Jews to say they're a fringe of a fringe. Grok, by the way, admitted to me when I proved to it that it's not true. I said, so why are you saying this stuff about me? So it says, basically, he said, look, I didn't do it on purpose. I'm programmed to just get stuff off the internet. So I said, you mean if a bunch of Zionists write something, whether it's true or not, that's what you're going to decide is true? I said, yeah. So it's, okay. Almost virtually all Orthodox rabbis opposed Zionism, but that the ideology of Zionism. 100 years ago, it wasn't clear at all. It wasn't definite that the Zionists would ever end up obtaining a state. But there was an ideology of Zionism. The ideology of Zionism, as you heard, was that the Jews are a nationality. And the reason why they wanted this, the reason why they wanted so much for the Jews to be a nationality and eventually have a state, they made a language for the Jews, modern Hebrew, which they had before Israel, which was completely unnecessary. Jews, they spoke Yiddish, Russian, whatever. They could have had much easier time, but they had to make they had a flag before they had Israel.
To create a nation.
To create a nation. Why did they want to make the Jews into a nation? The answer is because the Zionists, like the anti-Semites, agreed that the Jews are disgusting. Vladimir Jabotinsky, he was the founder of the revisionist Zionism, which later morphed into the Cherus Party, which later evolved into today's Likud. Benjamin Netanyahu considered Jabotinsky his mentor, and Benjamin Netanyahu's father, Ben-Zion Netanyahu, was actually a protege of Jabotinsky, like a right-hand man. Jabotinsky held a eulogy on Herzl, died in 1904. Jabotinsky was explaining what a real Zionist he is. And he said, let me bring up the exact language, okay? Now, they used to refer to Zionists as Hebrews, because Hebrew is it sounds like a national or geographic.
It's also probably a hijack.
It is. In the Bible.
It's the opposite, I think.
Yeah, in the Bible, the only time Jews are called Hebrews are from a non-Jewish perspective. Pharaoh said, the God of the Hebrews.
Yeah.
Jonah, when he meant the non-Jews, he says, I'm a Hebrew.
That I'm not an idol worshiper or something like that.
Right. With one exception, the Hebrew slave. But the commentators say because he degraded himself by making himself a slave. But Jews are not called, but the Zionists.
Hebrew, because also the nationality.
Hebrew, right. So, you want to know what a Zionist is? Listen to Jabotinsky. To imagine what a true Zionist is, he used the word Hebrew, I'm using the word Zionist. To picture his image in our minds, we have no example from which to draw. Instead, we must use the method of ipcha mestavra. It's a rabbinic expression meaning learn something from its opposite. We take as our starting point the Žid of today. Žid was a Russian, then derogatory slur for Jew, like a Yid. I'm going to use the word Yid. We take as our starting point the Yid of today and try to imagine in our minds his exact opposite. Let us erase from that picture all the personality traits that are so typical of a Jew, of a Yid, and let us insert into it the desirable traits whose absence is so typical in him. Because the Yid is ugly, sickly, and lacks handsomeness, We shall endow the ideal image of the Zionist with masculine beauty, stature, massive shoulders, vigorous movements, bright colors, and shades of color. The Yid is frightened and downtrodden. The Hebrew ought to be proud and independent. The Yid is disgusting to all. The Hebrew should charm all. The Yid has accepted submission. The Hebrew ought to know how to command. The Yid likes to hide with bated breath from the eyes of strangers. The Hebrew, with brazenness and greatness, should march ahead to the entire world, look them straight and deep into their eyes, and hoist before them his banner. I am a Zionist.
And I'm an anti-Semite.
Yeah. So basically, the Zionists agreed with the anti-Semites and they wanted to change the Jews. The short version of the history is that they tried assimilating after the Enlightenment and emancipation, but the anti-Semites, particularly in Russia, late 1800s, oppressed and attacked, lethally attacked, the assimilated Jews as well. There were various different answers to what to do. Communism was one, because if you believe in communism, it means everybody gets equal rights. Zionism was another. The idea of Zionism was, we got to change the Jews. The reason why people hate Jews is because they deserve to be hated. That's basically what they said. And I have a whole list of quotations from Zionists in my book, whole chapter with a whole list, that if the roles were reversed, it was, I believe, Greenberg said, wouldn't we hate the Jews as well?
Wow.
Yeah, the Jews deserve to be hated, so we got to change them. How are we going to change them? We got to change their aspirations. Jews aspire to be peaceful, to study, to pray, to do all the things that I described we do. No, we need them to be like normal people. The Jews need to change their personalities. They need to be fierce. They need to be cruel. They need to win gold medals. They need to want to win Eurovision Song Contests. They need to want to be just like the Russian Cossacks. How are we going to do that? We're going to change the Jews into a nationality. We're going to get them a flag. We're going to get them marching songs. Not about, if you want to know the difference between the Jews, the Orthodox Jews, if you want to know the theme of Orthodox Jews, take King David, for example. The difference between the way we view King David and the Zionists do, for us, the theme of Judaism, if you had to have one verse in the Bible, would be in Psalms. King David, who was a king, he was a king, he had an army. But King David writes, he says, Achas sha'alti me'es Hashem. I only ask one thing of God. Oisa avakesh. That's the only thing I'm going to ask. Now, what do you think he's going to ask? Give me the heads of my enemies on spikes like other people will. Give me treasure chests of gold. Here's what he says. Shivti b'veis Hashem kol yimei chayai. I want to sit in the house of God, in the study hall, all the days of my life. Lachsois b'noyam Hashem, to bask in the splendor of God, ulavaker b'heicholoi, and to continue visiting God's domain. That is the theme of Judaism, and every single Jewish kid and adult knows, I would guess, a half a dozen different tunes to which this verse has been put. Every single kid. Zionists have their songs too. Songs about
and it's
King
not
David.
Achashoalti.
Oh no, Jabotinsky's song, the Shir Beitar, about how all Jews are crowned with the crown of King David, and to die or conquer the mountain. Or he goes like this, Beitar, the Shir Beitar, because that was his youth group. Beitar migov rikavon va'afar, from a pit of dust and decay. Okay, meaning us. We're the dust and decay.
The Jid.
Yeah. Migov rikavon va'afar, bedamu bayeza, with blood and sweat, yukam lanu geza, a new race will arise for us. Gaon, proud, nadiv, generous, v'achzor, and cruel. Their goal was to create a new race of Jews. Proud, generous, cruel. And by the way, the Jabotinsky guys don't know this, because one of the problems with studying Zionism without knowing Judaism is that you will not notice that Zionism did everything specifically diametrically opposed to Judaism. What are the three Judaic traits that Jews are supposed to aspire to? Rachmonim, Baishonim, and Goimle Chasodim. Baishonim means to have shame, but in English there's the word shameless. A guy has no shame. What's the opposite of shameless? It's not really shame, but it means, when it says Baishonim,
humbleness.
That's what?
Humbleness.
Yeah, but not humble. Okay, that's approximate. But it means, Baishonim means the opposite of shameless. A person means merciful, have some shame, be merciful, and loving kindness.
Right.
Gaon means proud, but it's proud, the opposite of the Baisha, it's the opposite of the shame. Right. Achzor, cruel, is the opposite of Rachamon.
Wow.
And instead of Goimle Chasodim, Nadiv. Nadiv means to donate, but without the kindness. It just means Nadiv. He took that. Cruel. By the way, he knew that. He used Ipcha Mistavra. He knew rabbinic phrases.
Right.
He did. He knew Judaism. Not a lot about it, but he knew Judaism, Jabotinsky.
Just enough to undo
it. Im Eved oi helech notzarto ben melech, whether you're a slave or a tramp, you Jews were created as princes, crowned with the king of King David. Within the flame of rebellion, you're going to die or conquer the mountain. This is the difference between Jewish youth and Zionist youth. This is what they wanted, okay?
So the rabbi, King David was definitely one of our four rabbis, right? So I see that he's against Zionism. That's the answer to my question.
So the idea of Jewish nationalism, that the Jews are a nationality, was considered by all rabbis, maybe a couple of exceptions, but they were considered outcasts, heresy and idolatry. The idea that the Jews are a nationality, even what we would consider today religious Zionists, Mizrahi, they're amongst the Mizrahi party who agreed to have a state, who agreed to join the Zionists, but not give up their religion. That was their thing. They still objected and said that the Zionist idea, that the Zionist ideology, that the Jews are a nationality, is idol worship. They said that too, until Rabbi Kook came and he changed the whole thing. He said, oh, full-fledged Zionism, that's all good. He destroyed the Judaism even of the religious Zionists, okay? But then they were divided regarding, once there was a state of Israel, they all agreed still. I do not know any rabbi that said that the state of Israel was allowed to be created, because we have these three oaths, that it's prohibited to leave the exile. And even though there are a kid came to me yesterday on Purim, he said he was in yeshiva and his rabbis are anti-Zionists, but they don't believe in the three oaths or something like that. There is not that's Zionist influence. There is not, I have not identified a single rabbi that says that these three oaths are not binding and that the state of Israel as it came into existence, that's the question, is not a violation of it. Even in the Agudah, there are those that said, I have a book, it's called Comfort, Comfort My Nation, written by, it was edited by, what's his name, Lewin, the lawyer, but Nat Lewin. But it was essays of Yaakov Rosenheim, the Agudist.
Right, yeah.
And it says over there that if, in order for Israel to be created, there needs to be a war, none of our people agree, because that's against the three oaths, it's prohibited, etc. But now the question was this, and this is extremely important. Okay, Israel's there. We know that they hate Orthodox Jews. They know that one of the goals, perhaps the main goal of the state of Israel, is to change the personality of the Jews.
Right.
And it's the ultra-Orthodox Jews, the fight. The reason they don't want to go into the army is because the army was designed not merely as a military, but a way to change the personality of the Jews, to want the fights, to want to win, to be tough guys. Jabotinsky. And I am going to go a few minutes over time to read you something that's extremely important. But we do not want to change our personalities. We do not want to be cruel. We do not want to be shameless, even proud. The word proud can mean proud in a good way, or haughty or arrogant. In the Zionist way, it means shameless, the opposite of shame.
Yes.
We do not want to be that. We do not want to donate. We want to be kindly people. Okay? We don't. Okay. And we will fight them to the death. That we will fight them to the death. There was a protest in Israel against the draft, and there was a kid, he was 14 years old, who was unfortunately killed. He was killed by a bus, that he was dragged by a bus. And the Zionists were saying, look what happens when you protest against... The kid's father said, if I had a choice between my son going to the army, the Zionist army, or dying this way, I'd prefer he dies this way.
Unreal.
We will not trying to make us into Zionists is like forced conversion to another religion. We will not do it. But now the question is like this. Israel, they make laws about going into the army. They make various different laws in their Knesset. Let's assume in Nazi Germany, the Jews had an opportunity to be in the Nazi German parliament, conceivably getting a chance to prevent anti-Jewish laws. Would you join the Nazi parliament? There is an argument to say, yes, do it. There were, and today, there are Arabs in the Israeli parliament. Right? Now, the Arabs had a debate amongst themselves. We don't want to join the parliament because it's a Zionist parliament, and the others that said, no, we have our interests. This same debate happened amongst the Orthodox Jews. The Aguda, these parties that are in the government, the Haredi parties, their rabbi said clearly, Rabbi Grozovsky, when there was a question of whether or not to join, Zionist organizations, as I mentioned, prohibited to join, absolutely prohibited. Rabbi Grozovsky said, we still would be allowed to join the Israeli parliament. The reason is because a parliament is not an ideological organization. A parliament consists of representatives of various populations. The leftists that are anti-Zionists go to the parliament. The Arabs that want Israel erased go to the parliament. Everybody can be in a parliament, represents its citizenship, not Zionism, and therefore you can join, and it doesn't show that you support Zionism. As far as Israel not being allowed to exist, so they argued it's possible, no problem. I'm not disagreeing with that, they said. It could very well be. Israel's not allowed to exist. But whether we join the parliament or not, it will exist. It will not exist less if we don't, or if we.
It was their position, of course.
Rabbi came this, but he said nobody should dare think that we are any less anti-Zionist than Satma, than the Eidach Redis, than the Neturei Karta. He meant today's Neturei. He meant the Neturei Karta, who was a political party in Rabbi Amram Blau, a political party in the Jerusalem Rabbinate. We are not any less anti-Zionist than Satma. It's like the Arabs. Imagine the Arabs would go into the Israeli Knesset and people say, oh, they became Zionists. No, we're not Zionists.
They didn't forget to mention that.
They didn't forget, exactly. So he said, no, it is not true. We found the contrary. We have to assess what's better strategically, and perhaps we're going to have to be protesting against Israel more than the Satma, more than the Eidach Redis. But it has nothing to do with any nod towards Zionism. That's their position. And he made 5 or 6 conditions. One, that because of the optics of us going into the Knesset, and of course the Zionists are going to say, look, everybody, and even the Haredi, which was a trap, they said, we are obligated to publicize wherever we speak that Zionism is bad, against Zionism, etc., various different conditions. Rabbi Teitelbaum, Satmar Rebbe, disagreed with that position. He said, number one, as far as your conditions are concerned, you'll see that his experience shows when people create a permit to do something on condition, the permit will remain and the
Condition
conditions
falls
will
away.
not be fulfilled. And indeed, the conditions were pretty much gone.
Is that how it is?
They're gone. The Shmuel Orbach people, there's
Yes.
that faction, they actually said, Reb Baruch Shmuel Deutsch said once in Satmar, that they are the old Aguda policy, and they decided not to join the government because of this strategy.
Yeah.
But in theory, okay, that's number one. Number two, he said, a very interesting thought. He said that since the country's not allowed to exist, that means the government's not allowed to exist. And in a democracy, the voters are like part of the government. The president is my employee. There's not a government and a population. We're all in a democracy. We're all part of the government. They're just my agents. It's not a monarchy. It's not a dictatorship. If they're my agents, they're not allowed. And now, as far as it would exist anyway, he said, yeah. But if you have, he brought a proof from a Jewish religious rule that if you need 2 witnesses to convict somebody of something, and if you find 3 witnesses and they're all liars, so
all 3
get it, even though the third could say, if not me, he would have gotten killed anyway.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Work this way.
As long as you are, I guess you could call it in English, I'm not a lawyer, but an accessory to the crime or something like that.
Yeah.
Or I don't know exactly what the legal word would be, but that's what he says. No, according to Jewish law, it is prohibited whether it's beneficial or not. And he said it's not beneficial. It's net negative as far as optics, as far as accomplishing things, to join the Israeli government. And besides, it's prohibited according to Jewish law. The others that did join say that, no, it's permitted because of that reason, and it's net positive. Now, with benefit of hindsight, I know which future prediction I say came true. But all Haredim,
unfortunately, yeah,
all Haredim are anti-Zionist. That's part of being a Haredi. In fact, the Aguda, when they put out a statement against joining the World Zionist Organization, it was titled Haredi Ideology. Any Haredi ideology, you cannot...
Would agree with that.
Yes, you would agree with that. Now, one more thing, and then, unless you have any other questions, 2 things, actually. One, I want to read you something from the Hasbara Handbook. It's important. I have all this, anything you may hold on. This from the World Union of Jewish Students.org.il. They put out something called the Hasbara Handbook, promoting Israel on campus, all right? This was written 2002. So approximately 25 years ago,
24, yeah.
24 years ago. Page in the introduction. This page Roman numeral 5. That was before they start. They start with the real numbers. Israel shouldn't have to present herself as without problems, just as no other country does. All around the world, governments are attempting to tackle racism, poverty, prejudice, and Israel is no different. But listen to this. The reluctance of Jewish students to get behind Israel unconditionally is probably connected to the gradual shift in our generation towards attempting to find personal meaning in Judaism. That means Zionism was created as a substitute for personal religious meaning in Judaism. And the more people, this is 25 years ago, the more people try to find personal meaning in Judaism, a relationship with God, a relationship with Torah, the less they need Israel as their identity. Israel was a new Jewish identity. So if you want to weaken Zionism, strengthen real Judaism. This is them talking. Now, if you want to know why Israel, people are always talking about Israel, and they're making a war now. What is the end game? What was the end game in Gaza?
All the other wars.
There was a story, believe it or not, there was a story going around when I was a kid, and it's still going around. Crazy story. The Zionists like they do now, when they associate bombing Iran with the holiday of Purim and Amalek, and which is, of course, it's all nonsense.
Jabotinsky is no nonsense.
It's beyond nonsense. But they always like to, even though these guys are largely atheists, they like to associate themselves with the Bible just to get an identity. I'm guessing, I don't know if it's true that they do, but I don't know what. If, let's say, imagine the modern Greeks would like to associate themselves with Hercules for strength or something like that, even though they don't really believe in it. But the Zionists in 1967 in that war, so they made up this story, the Zionists, that according to regular natural way of things, Israel could never have won, and it was a miracle from God. Israel couldn't have won, it was a miracle from God, which is a joke, because everybody knew that Israel was going to win even before the war. CIA, MI6, everybody predicted it, including Israel. But there was a story going around that Zionist rabbis used to say, and it's still going around. It's unbelievable. They said in West Point Military Academy, they teach about wars and strategy, and some student asked, why don't you teach anything about the 6-Day War? And the instructor said, because we don't have an explanation. We only teach about war strategy, not about miracles, okay? And they literally run around telling the story. Okay, so back then, when Amazon first came out, I don't know if you remember, or if you're old enough even to remember, they sold books.
Yeah.
That was their thing, books.
Yeah, I do.
So when they came out, so I bought this book, the West Point Military History Series, the Arab-Israeli Wars, Chinese Civil War, and the Korean War. Okay. So of course they teach about the 6-Day War. It's very boring. It's all about strategy. And it's all about how Israel won, and they had a very good strategy, all their wars. But then they do have a question about Israel's wars that they are unable to answer. This is West Point. And again, it's not from a political perspective. It's not from an ideological perspective.
Military.
It's talking military and strategic and where they put their guns and stuff like that. Like, for example, here. In the second phase of the war, this was 6-Day War, Israel hoped to defeat the Egyptian, Jordanian, Syrian armies in turn, using its central position, much as Frederick the Great had used during his 7-year war when he faced the Russians, Austrians, and French. And it explains it. This means nothing to us, right? And at the end of all Israel's wars, now the last war that is described here before it was written was the Yom Kippur War.
73.
Yeah, so it says like this. A perspective. This is the summary of Israel as a military force in general. The Israeli military experience provides an excellent model example of how an outnumbered nation can fight and win, etc. They're very professional. Because of the continual danger of national extinction, the Israelis have organized as a nation in arms. They're militarized. Without maintaining a large regular force or permitting excessive military influence in the government, they've responded to their peculiar strategic challenge in a way that has allowed them to dominate their region militarily. Universal conscription, responsive reserve system, central position, highly competent, mobilized regular force have allowed the Israelis to successfully counter each perceived or real military threat. Okay? You got that perceived or real, but listen to this. It says, in a very short time, the Israeli armed forces have established a tradition of excellence and a worldwide reputation for professionalism. Critics of Israel, however, have argued that the Israelis have relied too heavily on the application of military force.
No.
Why? That in the essence of the Clausewitzian relationship between war and politics, and I need to explain that because I didn't know what it meant. I had to look it up. There was this Prussian military expert, Clausewitz, okay? Or Clausewitz, I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it right. He had a rule. His rule was like this. If you win a war, but your political situation after the war is not better than it was before the war, then it doesn't pay to fight the war. You need to gain something by a war, not just winning the war, okay? Critics of Israel, however, have argued that the Israelis have relied too heavily on the application of military force, that the essence of the Clausewitzian relationship between war and politics, military force and political ends has somehow eluded Israel's leaders. Because of political failures in 1956, military victory did little to guarantee Israel's security. That was the Sinai campaign. After the 1967 military victory, the Israelis felt that a solution to their security problem had been found in the strategic depth provided by the occupied lands. Yet, the occupation of this new territory severely strained their military and economic resources, further isolated them from the world community, and damaged the world's perception of the legitimacy of their cause.
Wow.
Ironically, it was the success of the Arab arms in 1973 and the temporary Israeli military setback that created a political environment which, for the first time, allowed the Israelis to conclude peace accords with their most formidable enemy. Only when they lose, then they make peace. However, the Israeli military response to Palestinian guerrilla operations, coupled with their treatment of the Arab population in Israeli-occupied lands, has eroded international support for Israel, strengthened the Arab political position, and increased willingness of the Palestinians to resist Israeli domination. Okay? Which means that they don't understand, why is Israel gaining by all of these wars? They don't know the basic strategy of war. It says they're so great at all of these things, but a basic strategy somehow eluded them. They don't answer it. You know what the answer is? Because this Clausewitzian rule for Israel doesn't apply. Their goal is to be strong, to win, not to be the weak Jew. When they win a war, even through great sacrifice, it doesn't matter. Jews finally won the war. If we could have had this army by Hitler, there wouldn't have been a Holocaust. They're living in the land of, they're living with half of their head in Auschwitz. It's either Auschwitz or Israel. Where was the world when the Jews were going to concentration camps? They weren't there. We have to depend on ourselves. Our strength, win, bomb, win wars, show that we're strong, show that we're strong. Netanyahu, at the end of the Obama administration, when they criticized, when the UN voted that the territories were illegal and America abstained, we did not veto, it was Obama. Netanyahu made some aggressive statement. It was
against Obama.
It was very wild, and people told him, you're going to start World War III. So he said, enough of this exile mentality, like this old Jewish mentality. Enough of this old Jewish mentality. We're not these old Jews anymore. And in 1967, I have over here, it's late, so I'm not going to read it, but when Levi Eshkol did not want to go to war, he said, why do we have to go to war? By the way, they say also, Egypt was not going to attack them. Egypt's assembly at the border was advanced defensive position. And they made a deal with the other Arab states that if Israel attacks anybody, everybody will join in a coalition. Israel attacked Egypt in 1967. Because of that, and this was written after Yom Kippur War, but like a generation ago, all the problems they have was because of this. So they said, Levi Eshkol said, why do you need to make a war? Why do you have to attack Egypt if we're in danger? Anytime you want. I gave you whatever military resources you need. You can get them anytime you want. Why now? So they basically made fun of him and said, you're like a Golos Jew. You're like an exile Jew. You're weak. You're negotiating. Oh. See, and that's the thing. Oh, and Jonathan Pollard, there's a video of him, of Jonathan Pollard, saying that the reason why Netanyahu is not aggressive enough, because he's an exile Jew. Here's the thing you need to know about Israel. They are obsessed and haunted. Their goal, their life,
with the exile,
not to be like me and you. Not to be passive, not to be pacifistic, not to want to live amongst neighbors peacefully like normal people. That doesn't work. We have to be strong. The only thing we have to save ourselves is the fist. That's it. To die or conquer the mountain. Wow. That's it. That's what they want. They're different than all other countries. They have a hit song, Ha'olam kulo negdenu. The whole world is against us. Kids' choirs singing this. The whole world is against us. They don't care about us. The song ends. we don't care about them either. They can all go to hell. That's
Wow.
a quote. That's what it says. They are brought up like this. Holocaust, everybody wants to kill us. The only thing we have is to show we're strong. If we show that we're obsequious, that's what Netanyahu there said. Nobody respects obsequious nations. Nobody will respect us. No. We want respect. We want to be feared. They've said this. We want to be feared. We want respect. We don't want people to love us. Naftali Bennett said that recently. We gave up on the world loving us. We want our enemies to fear us. They want to be feared. They want to win wars. So Clausewitz doesn't apply to them. They're not interested in, okay, will we be better politically or not? No, politically, the whole world hates us. We'll never be better politically. Negotiate, that will show weakness on our part. We need to show strength, and that's the only way that we're going to survive.
Scary.
Strength or death. That's what it is. To die or conquer the mountain. This is the reason why Israel exists. This is the reason why, it's not Israel, it's Zionism. This is the reason why Zionism exists. So they had to have a whole chain of things that they needed to accomplish in order to reach this point. Make the Jews, convince the Jews they're a nationality. Give them national pride, not religious pride. Religious pride is, okay, I prayed really well today. I studied, I finished my book, right? We made, I'll tell you, when I finished the Shas, the Talmud once.
Right.
It was, I did it for my wife's 25th anniversary. I made a party. It was a surprise party. She didn't know. We had a whole bunch of people. My son was in camp. I called the camp. They said, yeah, for such a thing, such a celebration,
Let him go.
We'll let him out. I snuck him home. She walked in. We made a whole big party. That's what we celebrate.
Right.
That's like a lifetime accomplishment. To Israel, that's nothing. To Israel, don't celebrate those things. No. Gold medals, Eurovision Song Contest. You're the strongest fighter. You have the biggest bombs. Let them fear you. I don't want to be feared. I just want to be left alone. I want to be left alone.
Yes.
Let me spend time with my family. Take a walk along the bay.
Yes.
Go to a city and have something to eat.
Yes.
And leave me alone. I just want to be left alone to live like a normal human being.
Very good. Yeah.
But guess what? That's anti-Semitic according to the Zionists. I can't be left alone.
Yes.